As fierce fighting between two rival factions of the military rages on in Sudan, there are growing concerns about the safety and security of Indian nationals stranded in the war-torn African country. But there is also some good news coming in now from Sudan. External Affairs Minister Dr. S Jaishankar tweeted just a short while ago pictures of the Indians who are waiting to be evacuated, and the tweet reads, and I quote, "Operation Kaveri gets underway to bring back our citizens stranded in Sudan. About 500 Indians have reached Port Sudan. More are on their way. Our ships and aircraft are set to bring them back home. We are committed to assisting all our brethren in Sudan." That's what the External Affairs Minister tweeted a short while ago. Now, according to government estimates, there are over 3,000 Indian citizens in that country, most of them in capital Khartoum, where the fighting has been most intense. 3 Indian nationals are among 66 citizens of 12 nations, including diplomats and government officials, who were evacuated by Saudi Arabia. A ship carrying 91 Saudi citizens and other 66 nationals reached Jeddah on Saturday in the first announced evacuation of civilians since fighting began. A convoy of vehicles carrying the evacuees to Port Sudan, from where they boarded ships to Jeddah. The 3 Indians evacuated by Saudi Arabia were crew members of the Saudi Arabian airline that was shot at as the fighting began on the ground last week. India's Foreign Minister Dr. S Jaishankar had spoken with his Saudi counterpart about the evacuation of Indians from Sudan. Some Indians have been evacuated by the French government as well. The figures haven't been revealed yet. Meanwhile, 2 Indian Air Force planes, as we just mentioned, have been placed on standby in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, and an Indian naval ship has been deployed at Port Sudan. This information has been tweeted, as we said, by the External Affairs Minister. The government says as soon as the ground situation in Sudan is conducive for evacuation operations, Indians trapped there will be brought back safely, and now it looks like that operation is already underway. It's been termed Operation Kaveri. India, of course, has been considering all options, including land routes, to move its citizens to safer places, because remember, the airport is not functional in capital Khartoum. Indian embassy personnel are staying back to coordinate and assist in the rescue operations. Apart from the Sudanese authorities, the Indian embassy in Sudan has been in touch with the UN, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, the United States, among other countries. Now, among the over 400 people who've been killed in the intense fighting in Sudan, one was an Indian. Albert Augustine, a 48-year-old former Indian serviceman, was killed by a stray bullet. According to the World Health Organization, more than 420 people have been killed and over 3,700 wounded, but the actual death toll could be much higher. As we mentioned earlier, there are over 3,000 Indians in Sudan waiting to be evacuated. Some 1,200 of them are descendants of Indians who migrated to Sudan decades ago. About 2,400 are UN staff, members of international organizations, IT professionals, and those working in other sectors such as the pharmaceutical, sugar, steel, and ceramic industries. Many countries such as the US, the UK, France, China, and Germany have also begun extracting their citizens from the conflict zone. The question is, what next for the stranded Indians? As we said, there seems to be good news now coming in from Sudan, because the evacuation process is about to kick off as far as those Indians are concerned. All right, let's now go across to our panel. Joining me on the show, Ambassador Satish Mehta, former Indian ambassador to Kuwait, is with us. We're also hoping to be joined in a moment by Major General Sudhakar Ji, defense expert, and Asif Ramiz Dodi, foreign affairs expert. All right, Ambassador Satish Mehta, let me start with you, sir. As we look at all the challenges that India is likely to face in this evacuation process, what is your assessment? Like I keep saying, there is good news coming in with the External Affairs Minister tweeting that about 500 Indian nationals have already made their way to Port Sudan and are waiting to be evacuated. We have our naval ship deployed there.
Thank you very much for inviting me. India has a very proud record of evacuation of its nationals wherever they are in difficult circumstances. Taking back to the 90s, early 90s, we had evacuated over 190,000 people from Kuwait. And this was the world's, and continues to be the world's largest evacuation ever. So, and we have continued this tradition ever since, more later in Libya, now in Sudan, and a number of other countries in between. So, first thing that you should know that government of India is deeply committed to the safety of its nationals abroad. The second thing at which you already mentioned, the telephone conversation that the foreign minister has had with S Jaishankar. There are a number of countries who are in the region or who can play a role in helping our nationals come out. The Prime Minister has himself chaired a meeting and that shows that the importance to evacuation and safety goes up to the highest levels. He chaired a meeting recently and to work out the logistics, to look ahead and see all the steps that we will be required to take. And the outcomes are very clear. We already have, as you mentioned, 2 Air Force planes docked in Jeddah and a naval ship in Port Sudan to bring back our nationals. The good news is that there are a few good news in this otherwise grim scenario. One, from whatever assessments one has seen, one has read, one has heard, foreigners are not being targeted. So the only Indian who unfortunately lost his life was a stray bullet hitting him because we are not a victim of a directed attack, and that's important. Neither side in this dispute or this internecine warfare going on in Sudan, they're not targeting foreigners. At least so far, this has been the picture, and that gives us comfort. Secondly, both India and regional players are talking to the sides to make sure that, in our case, Indians are evacuated safely and, if necessary, safe passage, etc., be arranged, or as circumstances permit, sending our Air Force planes to bring them out. More than 500 are already. We have a naval ship, so hopefully soon they will be able to come out.
Hopefully the evacuation will begin sooner rather than later. The External Affairs Minister has said 500 people of Indian origin, Indian citizens who were stranded there have already reached Port Sudan. More are on their way. We have a few more updates for you. We mentioned earlier that 3 Indian nationals were evacuated over the weekend by Saudi Arabia. As per the latest reports, 5 Indian nationals have been evacuated by the French authorities, along with their own nationals and people from other countries in the last 24 hours. So there are other countries, of course, also that are involved in these rescue operations. So Saudi Arabia has evacuated 3 Indians, the French authorities have evacuated 5, and 500 Indian nationals are waiting to come back home via an Indian naval ship that has already been deployed at Port Sudan. All right, let me now take this to our next guest, Major General Sudhakar Ji. Sir, you know, the Indian External Affairs Minister had said, and even MEA spokesperson had repeatedly said in the last 1 week, that India was in wait and watch mode, that while there were contingency plans in place, but the government was waiting for the situation on the ground to improve. They said as soon as the situation is conducive for evacuations, we will go in and bring our people back. Now, of course, sir, there has been absolutely no pause as far as the fighting is concerned. There has been no ceasefire whatsoever. What do you think has now changed for India to feel that the time has come for the evacuations to begin, with Operation Kaveri now being underway?
Neha, good evening. Thank you for getting me to your show. And I must compliment the channel for flagging the issue. It's a very important evacuation amidst extremely complex situation. I have been caught in similar situation to the west coast of Africa, Sierra Leone, And coming out from such situations is pretty difficult. Coming to the question which you are asking as to what is the change in the situation, I would give credit to our leadership in the hierarchy and the diplomacy. They have been at their best, they have put the best foot forward. When we talk about two military factions, two rivals in the same organization, it becomes very, very intricate and complex. And mind you, our relationship with Sudan, one doesn't have to elaborate much. India and Sudan, we have had the best of relationship right since its birth. And it's one of the countries on whose name there is a huge block in National Defense Academy, which was built by the funds provided by Sudan, that is in Khadak Basla. So, and all our leadership, they have been, while going to England in earlier days, they used to pass through Sudan. There are more than 30 agreements which are signed between Sudan and India. So having said that, all I'm saying is, there is possibly, as per my assessment, our External Affairs Ministry has been able to establish contact because both the factions, admirably, they enjoy, or India enjoys best of relations with both the factions. One. Number two, unfortunately, the situation is complex because the name of Egypt is coming up, supporting one of the factions. UAE is involved. There are other countries also involved in this. So it's highly complex at the global perspective. So therefore, I would say a major breakthrough has been achieved by our embassy in the capital of Sudan. They have been able to take stock of our people because in a situation like this, the first and foremost challenge that I have seen and witnessed and experienced in my evacuation from Sierra Leone was to have an authentic list of people who are inside the violent activities and the location and no communication. As on today, as we are talking or having a panel discussion on your channel, I have my inputs coming from my old friends. There is no water. There is no food to eat, although the media is saying very conflicting inputs. There is no communication. There is no safe place to hide or the safe houses. So these messages or informations are coming through multiple channels through different countries and to coming onto us. So that is the kind of challenge people are facing today.